Welcome back to another episode of Women's Sports Update. I am your host, Stacey Carter II.
Eloise Pearsall.
And today we're going to talk about the Unrivaled League, the big league going on right now for women's basketball. It's an exciting time for women's basketball. This league has been taking off on social media. So Eloise, you are the expert for Unrivaled. Tell us a little bit about the league, just in case people don't know.
So this is a new 3x3 league founded by Nafisa Collier and Brianna Stewart, who are both UConn alums, play in the WNBA. There are 6 teams: the Laces, Lunar Owls, Mist, Phantom, Rose, and Vinyl, with 6 players on each team. Each player receives equity in the league, which I think is really important, and they play on a compressed full court.
Nice. I really love the fact that the players have equity in the teams in this league, because it's been long conversations about them making money outside of the WNBA season. This is a perfect way to do it, at the same time stay competitive and keep that practice going, so that way they can go into the season with full momentum. Now, of course, with this new league, you're going to have players right off the bat going to dominate, going to make their name, make their bread. Who are some standout players for you in the Unrivaled League this season?
Nafisa Collier is definitely one of them. Tiffany Hayes and De'Erica Hamby also stand out to me. Nafisa Collier said right before she played in the 1v1 tournament that she was the best player out there, and I'd have to agree. She's amazing. Even though field goal percentage and assist to turnover ratios go down in 3x3 just because it's a faster play, there's less players on the floor. She's still averaging almost 30 points per game. She has over a 60 field goal percentage, and her assist to turnover ratio is a 2.08, which is amazing.
That is amazing. And it's even more amazing because she can possibly be my cousin. And it's a family affair going on, so I'm real proud of her. I think she's going to be an MVP candidate in the WNBA
For
season.
sure.
I would go as far as to say the league candidate. Now, I know we still got Asia Wilson out there, and she's not going to go away, but you know, sometimes voter fatigue sets in. And I think that's where Nafisa Collier could take advantage. And also, I do want to point out De'Erica Hamby, who's been making strides in the WNBA, really elevated her game with the Sparks. And to see her come into this league unrivaled and dominate, continue to dominate, it's going to just bode well for the Sparks going into the season. But let's just stick with the Unrivaled League right now. Speaking of Nafisa Collier, she plays for the Lunar Owls, who are undefeated.
Yes.
Tell the people about the Lunar Owls.
Yes, so obviously they're undefeated, doing amazing. Nafisa Collier is on that team with Courtney Williams, who are both on the Lynx, so they have amazing chemistry already. Skylar Diggins-Smith is one of the best defensive players in the league. Alicia Gray, well-rounded, experienced player. Shakira Austin, underrated player in my opinion. Mm-hmm. She's getting better every game. And they have Cameron Brink, who will play next year.
Cameron Brink is going to be on this team?
Yes, she signed with them.
Wow, they are already loaded. Like
yes,
you said,
they are.
Shakira Austin is one of the most underrated players in the WNBA. Unfortunately, she played for the Mystics, who are in the sort of a limbo state right now, and we already know about Skylar Diggins-Smith. She is a competitor. She's going to fight. And of course, once again, my possible cousin, Nafisa Collier, is leading the way. But there's another team you was telling me about that you were kind of surprised that they weren't doing so well despite having big names. Who was that team?
Yes, the Mist, I think, were a shock to me to not be dominating right now with Brianna Stewart, Courtney Vandersloot, to New York Liberty veterans, and one of my favorite players, Aaliyah Edwards, who I think that people should get to know. If you don't know her now, you should get to know her now. She dominated in the 1v1 tournament. She beat Brianna Stewart the first round, leaving her scoreless, which is insane. She was an 8 seed when Brianna Stewart was a 1 seed.
Oh, wow.
Something I love about Unrivaled is that it's rounding out players. One of the shots that Aaliyah Edwards needed to develop at UConn was her 3-pointer, which she didn't shoot very often. But in Unrivaled, one of the shots that she took against Brianna Stewart was a step-back 3, which was really satisfying to watch. She also beat Arike Ogunbowale, who is one of the best known 1v1 players in the league. So yeah, she was right there with Nafisa Collier in the finals, so she's very exciting to watch.
Yeah, and I thought that she was going to be in the running for Rookie of the Year this past season in the W. I had her on my rookies to watch because I do like her game. But again, you know, going for the Washington Mystics, just we don't know what direction they're going in. So hopefully this will help develop her into, I guess, the de facto leader at least for the Mystics coming up, in which they probably won't have Elena Deladon ever again. So we don't see about that. But I do want to point out a player that I don't got my eyes on, and that's Angel Reese. And it's not because of stats. I'm not worried about stats with her. It's the fact that she is answering the critics. Everybody been criticizing her about not being focused on the game, not practicing, her being in the media, being in the limelight. She got her own McDonald's meal and on the Reese's Puff cereal box and everything. But she's stepping into this league saying to everybody that she's a competitor, first of all. Second of all, she wants to improve. Now, I did see some highlights, and of course, social media is going to shine the light on the negativity and all the bad players. Now, she do have to work on her hamstring because she does lose the ball a lot, and she still has to form that outside shot and finish strong inside in the post. But I think the fact that she's on that floor, she's competing, she's going against the big names, like she backed down Breonna Stewart into the post. That just shows to me that she's ready to take off in year 2 with the Sky. So I'm real proud of her for that.
I agree.
Yeah, for sure. Last question. Let me ask you this. We know that the Owls are 8-0.
Yes.
Do you think they're going to run the table?
I
the rest of the way?
I think that they have to compete with the Laces. I think that the Laces added a new player recently, but Nigelene Hamilton, who's one of my favorites.
Oh yeah,
she had over 20 points in her first game, and she's just a playmaker. And I think that the Laces, if they can get Tiffany Hayes back in the game, if they can get Kate Martin back, I think that that'll be a dangerous team to play with.
All right, we're going to look out for the Luna Owls and we're going to look out for the Laces. Well, that was for me and Eloise talking about the Unrivaled League. Now let's pass it on to Kaylin and Boone for softball.
Thanks, Stacy and Eloise. I'm Caitlin McDonough, joined alongside Boo Gross, and today we're going to talk about some softball. The softball team is off to a 9-0 start, their best since the 2011 and 2022 season. But I have a feeling this is going to be just like the volleyball team, where they start off really, really well, but once it gets down to the crunch time in ACC play, they're just not going to get it done.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely does give volleyball vibes, and I mean, most of that is coming from the fact that you have this team with just unbelievable stats. I mean, really lights out across the board. But the only teams you're beating are all under 500. There's only one exception to that. And then the very next game that they beat them again in the same tournament, they were below 500 because of that loss. Going into this Georgia Classic right here, I'm gonna say this into the camera because I really do believe this from the bottom of my heart. Hot take if you want, but this game, these 2 games against Georgia, are the most important in program history. And the reason I think that is because we've never gone into a game against a Southern powerhouse, because let's be frank here, in the culture of NCAA softball, it runs through the South. It runs below the Mason-Dixon line all the way. You look at Oklahoma, 4 in a row. It runs to the SEC. And this is the first time you've ever gone against a powerhouse SEC opponent with this kind of hype behind you. And we know that Georgia is, in fact, vulnerable. They could lose a game.
Georgia absolutely can lose a game, and just talking about Syracuse, they were 14th out of 15 teams coming into this season in the coaches poll. I think if any team can do it, it can be the Syracuse team, and they're led by Madeline Lopez. She's a junior. She's had a phenomenal season so far. As a sophomore, she won numerous accolades and awards. She's carrying that over into this season. She has the highest batting average on the team, averaging .536, which is really good for 9 games so far. She also has a team high 8 runs and 15 hits recorded. She can get this offense going. And someone that can take advantage of her hits, Jaden Burney. She is a senior, transitioned from the SEC to the ACC from Mississippi State. She is an absolute beast on the bases. Her heads-up base running ability is one of the best in the league, and I think that Syracuse could capitalize off this by maybe popping up some sac flies and getting her speed around the bases.
Yeah, I definitely think the only way you're going to beat this Georgia team is you got to start swinging the bat early. I mean, like you just said, Madeline Lopez, the stat line it's just obscene. And we know that she can get bats to balls, but the fact of the matter is you're coming in against a Georgia team that pitches fearless, with one exception here. Now, I want to point this out. Lily Backus in that one game against Michigan, that is the one time we've ever really seen a falter out of this Georgia pitching room, which is unbelievable. I mean, you talk about fabulous stat lines. Syracuse has their own solid pitching staff, and I think that's going to be necessary to beat this Georgia team. I mean, Madison Knight has nothing in terms of ERA, 0.0 ERA through 19 innings pitched. I think in order to beat this Georgia team, you're going to have to get your superstars going fast. I mean, Madeline Lopez, she's just going to need to swing the bat, because if she's not on base out of the first inning, there's no way. And I say this because, well, Georgia, they've scored 40% of their runs in the first inning. They start fast, they put their foot right on your chest, they don't let up, and that's really how they get all of these teams out of Georgia with a loss. Now, we look at Michigan. They went in immediately, 3 runs down, into the third inning. Fourth inning, they get a run. They're starting to claw back into it, and they get inside Lily Backus' head. Lily Backus will most likely start one of these 2 games. I think if you can really start getting bats to balls early, you get your superstars that can really get on the base paths, crowd the base paths. You got Angie Ramos, you have Madeline Lopez starting out. If you can get that traffic on the bases early, get in the pitcher's head, I think you could walk out with 1 win against a really quality opponent south of the Mason-Dixon line. And I mean, once you get that going, that's when you can start talking about the ACC.
You mentioned pitching. Syracuse actually ranks number 1 for earned runs in the NCAA Division I, with allowing just 0.36 per game. And like you said, it all comes back to that pitching staff against this Georgia team. I think that they might burn through some of their pitchers, but it's really important early on in this season for pitchers not to get burned out. They've only got a couple that they can rely on, and they've proven so far that only some of them can get them so far in games. And I think the trio of them, of the starters, really, they average under 1 run allowed per game. Georgia is going to score. It's inevitable. They're one of the best teams in the country, not just in the top 25 in division softball. And I think for the Syracuse pitching staff, a win, it's going to do them wonders. But I think just limiting them and getting 1 strikeout per inning, or getting batters in situations where they're ahead in the pitch count, that's going to help them and build confidence to sustain throughout the season.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about really special seasons, and I mean, let's be real here, 9 wins through 9 games for a team like Syracuse, that's special. That has not happened in over a decade. When we talk about the stories of special teams, right, you talk about the wins, you talk about, oh, who did we beat, what happened here, what were the moments, but you also talk about the losses. And I mean, Syracuse could walk out of this Georgia Classic with 2 losses, both against Georgia, but if they're close, if they're tight, if they give them a scare, that can get you just enough momentum to get into Stanford. And let's be real, Stanford is a buzzsaw. I mean, the ACC, you cannot turn your nose up at this piece of softball. And I said it before, Syracuse, when you look at them, you think, do they really belong in this conference? Well, this is an opportunity to show you belong in this conference. And as you said, Dallas Goodnight, she's going to get her hits. It's inevitable. But if you can hold her to below her average, which I mean, of course, her average is unbelievable. It's 520. If you can hold her to below 500, which is what Michigan did. She went up, 4 at-bats, 2 hits. If you can hold her, you might be able to get a close game. And that's all they need, just a close game. Honestly, I think if they can get out with a tight game that is not a 5-inning close, I'm happy with it. I'm happy with it because then you can go into ACC play with a good, solid background, and then who knows. But without a good showing here at this Georgia Classic, I don't have a lot of faith, and I don't think it could go much farther without a solid performance.
You mentioned perfection earlier. It's going to take nearly a complete perfection from the defensive side of things for Syracuse. They are only making around 0.98 success rate for fielding errors, which means that they're not making a ton of fielding errors. They're catching the ball, they're getting runners out, they're getting situations where they're getting through the innings pretty quickly. We've already had 2 5-inning games so far. It's not going to be like that way against Georgia, and it's not going to be like that in the ACC at all. But having those early building blocks for success is definitely going to help this team in the future when they compete against the likes of Oklahoma for sure, or potentially if they make it so far.
Yeah, well, the hope is you could get that far, make it to the dance. I mean, maybe make some noise in the ACC tournament here. I mean, they're going to be going through the heart of this ACC roster here. I mean, immediately, like we said, going against Stanford, then you got Duke, you got to go down there. I mean, I'm almost more concerned about going into the ACC, kind of like what we were saying with volleyball. I mean, it wasn't so much that volleyball ran into a buzzsaw with a team out of conference. It's that they started conference play and there's all this hype around 15-0, oh my goodness, and then they get into the ACC. And I mean, let's be real, it was a little bit embarrassing to go into your own conference, right? This is an opportunity that, frankly, while we talk it up, while I say, and I do believe this, it's the most important game, 2 games in program history, it also comes with a little bit of a cushion, right? Because it's an out-of-conference opponent. And not only that, it's an SEC opponent. So you can lose this game and have people still say, wow, that was really impressive. I want to watch more of what Syracuse will do down the line. But going ahead here, what are we looking at here in this ACC? How do we think this could shake out in terms of getting some teams into the dance, beating out the SEC? I mean, that really is the rivalry. The real flashpoint here is the SEC and the ACC when you look at the top 25 rankings.
For sure, and if you look at the top 25 rankings, the SEC absolutely dominates that field. They have 12 teams, including 7 of the top 10 that are in the top 25, including Oklahoma, like you mentioned, number 2. There's been some controversy over that. We'll get into that a little bit later, but the SEC runs Division I softball. The ACC, I think, is catching up to it, but Southern teams just know how to swing hotter bats than the ACC team does. And I don't know if it's a weather thing or if it's that ACC is so completely wide open, one of the most competitive leagues, that there's not that competition like there is in the SEC. And you know, the ACC is a really good league as well, but there's something about the SEC where you go down to one of those high stakes environments, you don't win that often. All of those teams are incredibly well coached. They bring in top recruits every single year. If you're a softball player, your first thought is to go to the SEC. It's not really to go to the ACC.
Yeah, I mean, it really is it's a culture thing. And I think that I use this term lightly, but I feel like the ACC kind of cannibalizes its young a little bit here. I mean, because you look at teams like Boston College, like Syracuse, that really kind of get left behind. It's not, the alignment isn't really built for softball because the whole culture is entirely a Southern affair. Now, I say this, and then you look at teams like Duke, you look at teams like UNC, Stanford. I mean, Stanford was doing well in the Pac-12 before it dissolved, and now they're coming into the ACC. I mean, that's a whole new buzzsaw. Because when you look at the ACC stats, you look at the table here. I mean, it's the pitching and it's the hitting. That's where Syracuse really shines. That's their sweet spot. That's what they're doing well. And you look at the fielding, right? I mean, I think that the ACC is one of the better fielding conferences in Division I. And frankly, I think that if you could just get a lot of bats to balls and you could just really put pressure on these pitchers, because there are some high-level pitchers in the ACC, but I mean, the only real way to get them off the circle is to get in their head, get bats to balls, and that's what Michigan did, and that's how they got Lily Backus off. So this is why I'm so excited for this game, because not only is it an opportunity to tell the South, wow, we're here, we actually could do something, it's also an opportunity to look at where this team actually is, because we said at the beginning of the segment, this has not been a tested team. Going into Georgia, this is your first opportunity. You had a real test. I don't want the first test to be Stanford. I think that that's a real recipe for just disaster. And I think it's a great way that you could set up a very poor ACC campaign. Truly the most important game of program history. I've said it 4 times. I might say it a 5th because it is that important. It is everything. It is a culture-defining moment for this program.
A culture-defining moment. You've heard it from Dean Gross. And I think this pitching team, ranked first in the ACC, definitely send some shockwaves through those Georgia bats. They could see some strikeouts, some Ks knocked down. But let's transition to the bigger picture. Let's talk about the NCAA overall. I know you're not really too happy that Oklahoma is ranked number 2. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I said it before. It's for the culture. I mean, I personally think that softball, NCAA softball, is one of the best. I think it's one of the best products. I think it's one of the best cultures. I think it is one of the best overall sports that the NCAA has to offer. I think that a large part of that is the dominance of Oklahoma in these past 4 years. I don't understand why a team that has won 4 in a row has to leapfrog into number 2 because of an upset. They've already beat a ranked opponent. I mean, even though this is a completely revamped core, you simply can't look me in the eyes and say that Texas is the better team. Do they have the better players? Are they more complete? Maybe, but this is a team with a winning culture, and that culture has absolutely driven how well NCAA Division I softball has done in this past half-decade.
Oklahoma's 10-0, reigning national champions, 5 innings, twice in a game. I do think it's a little ridiculous that they're ranked number 2. They should probably be ranked number 1, but we've got to give it up for this Texas team. And switching to another part of Texas, Kylie Wilson and Najeri Canaday, they both lead the league, or lead the country. Kennedy leads the country in strikeouts with 68. Wilson leads the D1 batting average with 0.769. Texas is doing wonders for this league, and I think that they are bringing the attention that it deserves. And maybe some people don't consider Texas a Southern team, but their bats are hot right now. Their pitches are hot, and the South, obviously they run softball. Let's be honest, but it's going to be a great softball season, I think. And if Syracuse can get that win or even get a statement out there to the world that they're here and they're ready to compete this season, who knows? Maybe we'll see the Orange Dance later on.
I'm so excited. Truly, I've been high on this team for a long time. I mean, I love the fact that when you walk past their stadium, it is covered in snow, and yet this is still a team barnstorming through the country. They're 9-0, 9 straight. I'm so excited for this game on Saturday, the Georgia Classic. Watch it one more time. The most important 2 games in program history against UGA. We'll see how it shakes out.
Well, that's all the time we have for Women's Sports Update. I'm Caitlin McDonough, joined alongside Dean Gross. We hope you have a great weekend and tune in for another episode in upcoming weeks.